All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. I'm gonna turn it over to Anna to kick us off.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome everyone. I know that this is a very tough time for all of you here joining us. For those of you who don't know, my name is Anna Anderson, and I am a staff attorney at the National Consumer Law Center, where I work on school accountability, student loans, and closed school issues such as this one. I'm also an undergraduate alumni of Wells. I graduated in 2010 and am personally very sad about what has happened here, which is one of the reasons why I connected with our good friends at NILAG and Law New York to put together this webinar to answer your questions and sort of explain your legal rights going into the closed school process. So we're very lucky to have Jessica Ranucci and her team from the New York Legal Assistance Group, NILAG, who are going to be leading this webinar today to go over all of your questions and answers that you may need as you're going into the next few weeks and few months related to Wells's closing. Additionally, we have folks from Law New York, Legal Assistance of Western New York, which is the local legal aid organization based in Cayuga County, where I actually worked for several years after going to Wells, and have a number of Wells friends who have worked at Law New York and are still there today. So we're grateful to have Law New York and NILAG here to answer your questions. I am going to kick it back to Jessica to get us started, but I just want to let you know that this is being recorded. We will post this recording. I think NILAG's website is going to host that recording. And after the fact, if there's anyone who has questions about where to find the recording, they can reach out to me. I'll put my information in the chat. All right, thank you so much, and passing it over to Jessica now.
Thanks, Anna. I'm happy to get started, but before I do, does anyone from Law New York want to come off video and just introduce yourselves? You're welcome to, but if you don't want to, that's fine as well. They're here.
Hi, I'm Amalia. I'm a paralegal at Legal Assistance of Western New York, and I'm working under the EdCap grant to provide different student loan services for free. We can assist with many different things, such as assisting with determining the best repayment plan, helping apply for different loan forgiveness, cancellation, and discharge programs, help you get out of default, and really just answer any specifically student loan questions you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Amalia. So we'll talk at the end about individual follow-up next steps, but all three of our organizations we are all nonprofits. We are all only help people for free. I tell people we literally don't have a way to take money from people. The only way you can get our help is if you don't pay for it. And we're going to work together to do some individual counseling for Wells students. I think that hotline is going to go through us, NILAG, the New York Legal Assistance Group, but you're also welcome to reach out to Law New York and to Anna at the National Consumer Law Center, and we'll also coordinate together on this. I just want to start before I put up the slides by introducing my team here with me. You can see in the background, this is Laura Waldman. She is our EdCap, as we say, that's the acronym for the New York State funded student loan help service, free student loan help service. Laura works on our EdCap team, and also just off camera in the corner, come say hi, Benji, is Benji, who is on my team and is coordinating our hotline. Laura, do you mind starting with the slides? So just to kick things off, it's going to be a little bit of a repeat of what we already said, but basically, again, we're the New York Legal Assistance Group. We're a free legal services center. We're here in New York City. You might be like, why are you guys from New York City, ones that are leading this webinar? The reason is that we have done large scale student advising for 2 previous college closures. Both of those closures were here in New York City, but we've learned a lot of lessons from those closures that I think are really just applicable to different types of schools, to different areas, certainly in New York State. And so I wanted to be able to share the expertise that we've learned with you all, especially after Anna talked to me. I know that, Anna, as you know, is an alum and cares about this personally. So we were happy to partner. Do you mind go to the next slide? Great. This just says what I said. We're a civil legal services nonprofit. So NILAG and Law New York are both members of the statewide EdCap network. That stands, I think, for Education Debt Consumer Assistance Program, but it is a free statewide network of student loan advising. We get funding from, there's an intermediary, but essentially funding from New York State to give free, unbiased, high quality student loan advice. So I'm going to talk today. I just want to go over like the brief agenda. I'm going to talk with some basic advice for students. I'm going to start talking about your records, some things about financial information and loans, some things about transferring, and then an overview of the relevant regulators. And then at the end, I'll talk again about the hotline and how you can get follow-up with individual questions. So, that's fine. Yeah, no, maybe I changed the order. It's fine. Go ahead to the next one. So I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about financial information and loans. And this is just at a very high level. This piece is really the piece that our organizations are most equipped to give advising on. I'm sure that you all have a million questions. We've, like I said, we've done 2 of these school closures before in terms of advising students, and there are all sorts of issues that come up, all sorts. International students can have visa issues. People have it just like people live complicated lives, and the school closure sort of like throws a wrench in, a million aspects of people's lives, from, childcare to, all sorts of everything. To be frank, there's a lot of those things that our organizations are really just not equipped to give advice on. We're not people who know everything about everything. But this financial piece really is, I think, the most important area in which we want to make sure you feel first empowered here with some general advice. And then second, empowered to follow up individually with the hotline or with our organizations in order potentially to get free more individualized advising. I'm going to jump into this, and I just want to echo what Anna said. I should have started with this by saying that it's really terrible that you guys are in this position. Having worked with students in school closures, I think I get really frustrated sometimes around, like, the news that you read about school closures where people talk about it in such a depersonalized way. I think it's really unfair, and it really affects people, and sort of you don't have an expectation that your school is going to close in the middle of your program. So I just want to say, like, I'm going to go into some sort of dry financial stuff, but I really do want to express that I think you're in a tough position, and I acknowledge you're in a tough position. And I'm just talking about the money because, like, really that's the area in which legal services attorneys have a lot of value, not because, like, it's all dollars and cents. Like, you're real human beings. This is a real, like, awful thing that's happened in your lives, and I just want to acknowledge that. Back to the money. So many of you likely borrowed federal student loans to attend Wells. If you previously attended other schools, maybe those other schools as well. Some of you might have a good handle on this, you know exactly what your federal student loan situation is. Other people might be like, I was in school and not thinking about my loans so much, or I was just clicking the buttons, or, my parents helped me do it. I would advise that each of you, honestly, even, if you think there's even a chance that you have loans, that you go to your studentaid.gov. That's the official government website for student loans, and that you log in and you can get your official student loan record there. The like web portal is pretty friendly, and you can just see any record of your loans there. If you end up working with us more individually, there's like a more technical record we can show you how to pull. But really, that's the starting place for federal student loans, is to go there. All federal student loans have a grace period after you leave school. So most of you, if you have a federal student loan, should have 6 months until your payments start. So that is true if you leave the school now, regardless of whether you're graduating or if you were just in the middle of the school when it closed. Which means you probably won't have loan payments until the late fall or the winter. There's one caveat to that. If you've previously had times out of school or previously used your grace period, you may not, like you took a semester off, for example, you may not have the full grace period. So if that applies to you, again, we can help do individual advising, but just to know that you do have a little grace period till you have to pay your loans. A really important thing that I want to advise you, and I want you to tell all of your friends, this is like the number one reason to do this webinar, is that federal law provides that under certain circumstances, but not other circumstances, everybody who attends a college that closes while they are enrolled can get a full cancellation of the federal student loans that they borrowed to attend that school. So this is like super important. Let me repeat it. If you are attending Wells right now and you have federal student loans, you may be able to get those loans just completely wiped away and canceled, but the choices you make now are going to determine whether or not that's true. And we want to get this information, again, free, unbiased advice into your hands and your friends' hands and your roommates' hands, whatever, into the hands of everybody so that people can make informed financial choices. Sometimes people have a tremendous amount of loans, and we want you to make the decision of what you do next, fully understanding the financial consequences, because closed school discharge, which is this loan cancellation, can be a tremendous benefit, but you do have to like sort of make certain choices and check certain boxes. I'm going to do a whole thing about that later, but I just want to flag that. And to note, it's only for federal student loans. There are other types of financial circumstances that you might have. There's what we lump together is, sort of tuition debt, credit balances, and institutional loans. This is basically a question of, oh, great question. I'll go through that in the chat. I just saw one about students who recently graduated. I'm going to talk later about the exceptions. The short answer is no, because they graduated, but I'll explain more. So the next category is tuition debt, credit balances, and institutional loans. These are just basically a question of like, do you owe money to Wells or does Wells owe money to you? I think for most of you, the answer is likely no. Most people who are enrolled in school like settle up their money every semester. That's how you're allowed to keep going in school. But it is possible that either you owe money to Wells or Wells owes money to you, in which case there's not sort of one size fits all advice. That would be a good reason to call our hotline is to talk more about your rights under that. But the advice I'd say the most generally applicable advice is maybe just like wait and see what happens with Wells. Going a little bit out of order, I don't know what's going to happen to Wells. I don't know anything about its finances. I don't know anything about its regulatory structure, but we have seen before organizations go into bankruptcy. I'm not sure how that would even work with the type of organization like legally that Wells is. All that is to say, when a school is running out of money and can't pay its debts, like the payments that you make to the school or that the school makes to you, you want to be really careful about, documenting and maybe not overpaying if you don't need to. And so I think sort of waiting and seeing how the financial piece shakes out would typically be my advice. But again, contact us. It's hard to give general advice in that situation. Private student loans are much trickier. So a private student loan is a student loan that you obtained, like, for example, from a bank or from anyone essentially other than Wells and the federal government. If you go to studentaid.gov, you're only going to see your federal loans. Your private loans will not appear there. Your private loans might be on your credit report, would probably be the best place to look for them. You can go to annualcreditreport.com and get a free credit report. Unfortunately, the options for private student loans are not very good. To be honest, like they're a private financial product between you and a bank. One option that you may have is to seek forbearance or a temporary period of not making payments while you figure out what you're doing after the closure. There is also an option to assert certain claims that you would have had against Wells, against the holder of the loan. I think that's might be kind of a long shot in this situation, but again, we'd be happy to talk you through it on the hotline if you do have private student loan debt that you're concerned about. I'm going to pause there, again, going back to the closed school discharge later, but that's sort of the financial overview. I'm going to go to the next slide, Laura. Thanks. Okay, records. This is simple. Get all your records. So the two most important things that I think everybody should get is your transcript and your student ledger, which is basically like, I don't know exactly how it works at Wells, but there should be some way to like log in online and like see the money part of your account, like with the whole history, the whole time you've been here of like, this loan was credited, this charge was made, registration fee. I would just like print that out in PDF and save it because it's really important. Again, we are lawyers, we're concerned about the money, but on the money side that you have like a good, accurate record of all the payments to and from the school, because that will likely disappear. Whatever portal you use just won't be there anymore. Your transcript, for obvious reasons, you're going to want your transcript. And remember, your school email account is probably going to be deleted. I don't have any specific reason to know about this for Wells, and hopefully maybe there's some like provision or period in which it would be live. But I think I would say, having again worked with students in other schools, you should proceed as if everything from your school email account is just going to disappear. And I would actually spend a long time going through and like PDFing and saving like important emails or people's contact information. Try and make sure your friends and your professors have your personal emails, not at the Wells account, because I just think it's likely that that's all going to go away. Can you go back, which is real quick? Sorry. And I would just say on the records, I don't know, like this is, I think would be a great area. I know there's a lot of interest in advocacy on behalf of Wells students. I think this would be a really important area of advocacy. It's not my area of expertise, but I think that it would be very fair for the school to have like a free, easy process, essentially for students to get all of their records all at once and everything that's important. And if I were you in your position, if you're like, to the extent all of you I know are feeling really upset, and like, I think that, you know, students or alums coming together to really urge the school to have like a streamlined, dedicated process for getting students records and everything they might need and getting that into their hands, like forever, even after the school closes. That is like maybe the number one most important advice I have for closure. And I think that like, if you're advocating for the school or you're in meetings or you're talking to the leadership, I think like paying attention to that is really important. I saw there's a question in the chat about multiple formal transcripts. I would, it's hard to say, right? You might need them. Are you going to grad school? Like it probably couldn't hurt. There's definitely going to have to be a process in the future for Wells students to get their transcripts. Like all these schools that close have to have some process. It's just like sometimes it sucks, to be honest. Like a different school has them and that school doesn't really care about you, or like it's not that it's impossible to get later. It just may be more difficult. Again, if I were in your position and I were going to advocate to the school, I would advocate something like, you're screwing us over because of the closure. Why don't you give everybody 5 free copies of their official transcript? Like, why does the school need that money now? So I don't know that you would like need a lot of them, but I think it would be very prudent to get them. And also I think you certainly have the moral authority to request that the school give them to you for free. Okay. Okay, transferring. Again, another like really top line piece of advice to tell you, you tell all your friends, tell your roommates, go out into the world. Do not rush into re-enrolling at other schools. I think the number one worry you should have about a school that is pushing you to enroll is, why does that school want you so bad, right? Like schools that are desperate for students and desperate for their money and desperate for the loan dollars, those are the ones that are going to be emailing you. Those are the ones that are going to say like, you're allowed to come right now. No, that is it's a red flag, and I would be very concerned about it. I would consider, depending on your financial situation, especially if the money is an issue, to research public programs and really to just take your time and like imagine, I know this is like horrible and it's like upended your life, but imagine it's like you're in high school again and you're trying to consider a college, and sort of try not to rush into something and do that more considered broad search, because you don't want to end up in a situation that's not right for you. Okay, I want to point out something. I understand that Wells has on its website and has perhaps told students that Manhattanville University is named a preferred teach out partner. I have a teach out, I'll explain in a minute, is like an official agreement between 2 schools that has to be approved by an accreditor, potentially other regulators. Wells does not have an approved teach out program. So Wells might hope that Manhattanville is its teach out partner, but that is concerning. I would say that Wells is listing Manhattanville as a teach out partner. The second screenshot, I took these both this morning. So the first is the Wells website naming Manhattanville as a teach out partner. And then the second one is from the accreditor's website that requires Wells to submit its teach out plan by May 13th. So there has not yet been an approved teach out. Do you want that slide? Is there another teach out slide? Yeah, okay. Sorry, we'll go a little out of order. Okay, so what is a teach out? A teach out is in theory a really good idea. basically, if a school is closing and there's another school that's able to take those students, those two schools can work together to make sure that students basically get the best end of the deal. So for example, let's say you've done 7 of your 8 semesters, the other school might just take all the credits from those 7 semesters and let you just like finish out your last semester and graduate. They might take more credit transfers than normal. They might like waive semesters of residency because schools are usually like required for you to like, be on campus a certain number of semesters. Maybe they'd have that waived. Anyway, it's just an agreement that like in an ideal world allows for the best possible treatment of students. Is that what's going to happen with Manhattanville? Maybe, maybe not. It has not yet been approved. And like, I'm not here to judge, like perhaps the Wells and Manhattanville administrators are working their very best every day to try and make that work for students. I just think it's too early to see because it hasn't been approved yet. I think in sort of the negative, oh, yeah, Sarah, one sec. I'll finish this and I'll answer that question. So, one negative of a teach out is like basically, like I was saying before, the schools that really want your business might bill themselves as a teach out or might try to be selling themselves in order to just like funnel you and try and get you to not consider your other options. And so I think that to be if a teach out is not approved, I would be like a little bit wary of it because to get approved, like someone at the accreditor who like really thinks and knows about this has to like decide that the agreement makes sense for students. Whereas if the teach out has not been approved by anyone, it's just like might be more for show than for substance. And I think that that's a concern. One really important thing, I'm going to talk about this again later with the closed school discharge, which is the loan cancellation thing I was talking about. Whether or not you take a teach out has like it can disqualify you from getting your loans canceled. So it's like really, 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 really important that before anyone accepts a teach out, you sort of understand your loan situation and think about it and then make your decision going in about the teach outs. So Sarah, I haven't seen the other, like just to be honest, I haven't looked at the other schools on the Wells website. I think that I would not, my advice generally would be to not move to any teach out or any transfer program yet until the accreditor has had the opportunity to weigh in and until you've really confirmed in writing the transfer credit. So do you mind going back to the transfer credits slide? Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to pick out Manhattanville. Nothing has been, Anna's right in the chat, nothing has been approved for a teach out. So the key issue that you guys are going to run into when you're going to a new school, whether or not it's a teach out program or just another program, is how many of your credits will transfer. So if you're in the position of Sarah and you're like, I want to go to this program, maybe it's a teach out program, maybe it's just a program you found on your own. It doesn't matter. The question is the same, is how many, if any, of your Wells credits will transfer? You need to know this and you need to get it in writing because you don't want to be in a situation where you did, let's say you were an English major and the only class they'll take is like 3 credits of freshman English and you've taken, 7 other English credits and they're like, you have to start over. I don't anticipate this being a tremendous problem for Wells students because Wells is good school and Wells was accredited while you attended, and any loss of accreditation due to the closure doesn't really impact your credits because you were attending while it was still accredited. But I still think that like, to me, the question of whether or not you want to go to another program, like the most important things to answer is like, is this program really trying to recruit me, right? In a way that's like makes me suspicious of their motives. Like, do they just want my money or do they really want me to be a student there? I think another question is, are my credits going to transfer? If so, how many? And do I have it in writing? And then a third question is, if I do have federal loans, how is this decision going to affect my entitlement to loan cancellation? Again, I'm going to go through that in a sec, but this is why I want to like try and get this information out there as much as possible, because each of your decisions about whether or not to transfer your credits, whether or not to enroll somewhere else, can affect whether or not you get loan cancellation. So I just want to sort of like give that warning up front. But I think if you feel confident that you like the school and you feel confident that a good amount of your credits will transfer and you get that in writing, then I think like, again, it's just like imagine anyone who's transferring schools. You just want to sort of make the decision the same way. Okay, thanks, Laura. Okay. Now we're going to go in a little bit more to the closed school discharge, which is the federal loan cancellation. I know some of you federal loans won't apply to you, but some of you will. So I just want to go through this. So again, it's only for federal loans. It is only for people who were in the school when it closed or within 180 days, which is like 6 months before the school closed. Wells obviously doesn't have a formal closure date yet, but essentially that's going to mean anybody who's enrolled in the school right now, who is enrolled at any point in this semester, or likely people who were enrolled at the end of last semester. So like finished out last semester, but didn't come back for this semester. Or technically, if you are on an approved leave of absence, although I think that's a circumstance in which it would make sense to talk to our office. You're not eligible if you graduated. And basically the idea is, look, if you graduate or complete your program, you're really getting the benefit of the money that you paid. And it may not be exactly the same program you wanted, obviously like your school closed, but your credits are still good, your degree is still good, you can still go out into the world. Whereas if your school closes and you're not really able to transfer credits or finish your degree, like you're not getting the benefit of the money you paid, and it would be unfair to make you repay those loans. And so in those circumstances, you can get your loans canceled. The really key issue here are these credit transfer and teach out things. Do you mind going to the next slide, Laura? Thanks. So you cannot get your loans canceled if you transfer any credits to a same or comparable program of study. So if you're an English major and you go to that other school and you transfer 3 credits to your English major there, you can't get your loans canceled, even if you had like $80,000 of loans and you only got 3 transfer credits. That's like the worst possible situation. We don't want to see anyone in that situation. You're also not eligible for closed school discharge if you enrolled in or accepted a teach out. These are just approved teach outs. Wells doesn't necessarily have any approved teach outs yet, but like you can imagine if Wells does get teach outs approved soon, then those teach outs, if you enroll in them, then you can't get your loans canceled. There were some rules that would have expanded this, but they're blocked by the courts and it's not looking good. So I'm like not even going to go into them. Like this is these are the federal rules that govern right now. Next slide. So in terms of, yeah, that's good. So in terms of like, I know that one of the questions just sort of often feels like, how can this possibly be happening and no one's paying attention? There are some people who are paying attention. I think I wish they would pay more attention, certainly, but there are places that you can go to advocate beyond just Wells itself. So I think a great source is the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. That is Wells's accreditor. It's really the accreditor for most schools in New York and sort of in this general, like, it's called the Middle States region, but like whatever, with the states surrounding New York. An accreditor is basically like a nonprofit organization that is made up of like higher education professionals that works with schools to oversee the like academic side of those schools. So the accreditor is the one that oversees the teach outs. It also has a lot of ability to push the school to do certain things as its closure. Like this is the institution, this is the Middle States, the accreditor is the one that's like, you know, in constant contact with the school. You saw that thing I screenshotted from the website, like they're requiring the school to send reports. They can take complaints. Anna just put the email addresses in the chat. So, you know, some and they likely accredit any transfer schools also. So like an example of a complaint that once I submitted to Middle States is when a school closed, one of the like quote unquote teach out programs was the school had a nursing program. It was a different nursing program. That second nursing program said it was going to be a teach out. It only had like 20 spots and there were like 200 nursing program students at the first school. And so the school like claimed it was going to be able to take the students, but then really it wasn't able to because it didn't have enough spots. Like that was the kind of thing that was good to raise with Middle States, like sort of these issues about like the school is saying that this will work, but it doesn't really work, especially as it goes to like teach outs and credit transferring. I think that that would be an appropriate place to do it. They have a formal third-party complaint process, but also you can reach out more informally to those email addresses Anna put in the chat. The second is the state regulator, which is the New York State Department of Education. This is sort of like the buck stops with them in a certain sense. And I think the most important thing they're in charge of is the records. Like they are the ones who are going to have to eventually figure out what to do with like the transcripts and the records. So if you have issues with records or transcripts, I think it would be appropriate to raise it both with Middle States and the New York State Education Department. Finally, the federal regulator, the U.S. Department of Education, is handles federal student loans. Honestly, not that much else. Sometimes this is called the regulatory triad in higher education, but essentially these three different bodies, the state, the feds, and the accreditor, each have like a piece of the rules that govern states, or institutions. So I just want to, that's sort of the stuff I want to present on. We're going to take questions in a sec if you guys have more questions, or we're happy to talk to you. But I just wanted to talk a little more about what we can and can't do and what we'll be doing after this. So our primary area of helping people is really loans. So federal student loans, sometimes private student loans, or tuition debt. We do consults with people, just general overview. For anyone who is eligible or potentially eligible for closed school discharge, we absolutely encourage you to reach out to us. We can give you like an individualized advice. We can talk to you about like how transferring will or will not affect your eligibility. Like that is a really good use of your time and our time, because it's, often people have a lot of money at stake and it's a really important decision. So please reach out to us. We do public education like the events like this. We're going to hopefully put this on our website. You can, tell your friends to reach out to us. We typically cannot help with education related issues. So what that means is sometimes there'll be something like, let's say this semester you get a grade that you don't think is the right grade because your professor left their job early because the school is closing. Like that's terrible. I don't want to deny that it's terrible, but it's just like we just don't have expertise in that. You could reach out potentially to Middle States, but those education specific issues are much harder and it's not really something we can address. We also generally can't help with assisting faculty and staff. Obviously, faculty and staff often want to help their students, and we're aligned on that. And we're happy to talk to faculty and staff about helping students. But there are some situations in which there's a small pot of money to go around, and either that money helps students or it helps faculty. And because that sort of, in theory, could result in a conflict, we typically help only students or, other people, parents, faculty, and staff to the extent that they are interested in helping students. That's really the angle that we have. Next slide. So we've set up a hotline for WELL students. We're gonna circulate a flyer. Oh, that's a really good point, Anna, that we can help, yes, we can also help faculty and staff about their own student loans, although not unemployment. It sounds like Law New York might be able to take questions about both. That's a really good point, just not about their employment related issues. We here at NILAG are going to run a school closure hotline. Again, I would really strongly encourage anyone who has federal student loans who would like more information about potential cancellation. Like that's just absolutely the number one reason. Please call us, tell all your friends to call us, tell everyone you know to call us. But there's other situations in which we can be helpful. I think a lot of these money questions, or if you have credit transfer questions, if you're considering reaching out to the accreditor, but you're not sure, those are all totally appropriate questions. I introduced at the beginning, Laura and Benji. Our team here can answer these questions. I think we're also going to be partnering with NCLC, potentially Law New York, depending on how many calls we get. And they might be fielding some of these calls as well. But we're here, it's free, unbiased advice, and we really encourage people to call before they make these big decisions if you'd like some help. Thanks, Anna, for putting the link in the chat. I think that is the end of the things that I had wanted to say, but I'm happy to take questions. You can either just come off mute or in the chat, whatever you prefer. And if anyone else from the other organizations wants to jump in now, feel free.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and just clarify one thing as well. For folks who are transferring and continuing on their education next semester, some of the things that we said about the grace periods and when you'll need to be making payments, that won't apply if you're going to be going back to school. You'll still have your in-school deferment and still be able to benefit from that. But folks who are not continuing on or are graduating, that's when you really need to pay attention to those grace periods and when your payments are going to start kicking in.
Sarah put a question in the chat that is a really good one. So Sarah says her daughter's a rising senior with federal loans. And if she accepts from a college and all her credits are transferred, what happens with the Wells loans? Will they become due or not? So yes, you should call me. That's a great reason to call us. But let me just sort of walk it through in case this is helpful to other people. So first, some of it depends if Hobart Williams Smith becomes an official teach-out partner. If it does become an official teach-out partner, then your daughter will not be eligible for loan cancellation because she will go accept a teach-out program. The second question I would ask is if your daughter is taking the same or comparable program of study, essentially if she's taking the same, whatever, again, she's an English major, she's going to be an English major at the new school, then also she would not be eligible for loan cancellation because she's essentially continuing her program of study at a new school. So if either of those is true, she would not be eligible for loan cancellation. She would just have to repay back her Wells federal student loans, just as she would have if Wells did not close. The reasoning, again, look, this isn't my policy, it's a federal policy, but just to sort of explain the reasoning, I think the idea is if this works for your daughter, that would be great. She would just go in as an English major to Wells. Guess what? She'd finish, transfer credits. She'd finish as an English major at another school. I think the government would say, like, that's how it's supposed to work. Your daughter was able to finish her program, so she does have to pay the loans she took out for that program. Whereas if your daughter does not end up transferring credits and is not able to finish her Wells program, then under that circumstance, she would be eligible for loan cancellation. But I would be happy, we could talk to you more about your situation, but just to play that out, that's sort of the general advice I would have. Bridget, can you have your loans canceled and then decide in a year or two to go back to school and then borrow again at the new school? That's a complicated question. I would say, again, the two things you need to pay attention to are number one, is it a teach out program? So I would advise if you did go back to school, not a teach out program. And then the second, is it a same or comparable program of study? So if you go to a new school, it can be later, it can be right now, and you're studying something new. Let's say you were the English major and you're like, I want to do computer science. Nothing stops you from getting your loans canceled and starting a computer science degree because you're not enrolling in the same or comparable program of study and you're not doing a teach out. Those are the two things that would disqualify you. If you don't do those things, then you should be able to get your loans canceled. But if you do those things, you shouldn't be. Happy to take other questions, either loan related or generally other questions. Great, thanks, Bridget.
Yeah, and I want to give a plug for all the Wells College English majors out there. I was a Wells College English major and now a lawyer working on higher education and student loan issues. So there's a lot you can do with an English degree, particularly from Wells. So shout out to all those folks.
All right, I think I might have, Laura, do you mind ending the recording? I'll end the recording, but then we'll stay on for a few minutes. I know sometimes like it's recorded, it can be, if people have other questions or want to talk to us individually, I think I also just want to highlight what Anna put in the chat. I'm going to put it again. This is our website that has, oh, I might have to end the recording. I'll say, okay. I'll end the recording in a second. I just put it again in the chat, nylag.org/Wells. This has our hotline information. It has how to reach us. We'll update it if there are things that need to be updated. But essentially, I think the moral of the story is all the organizations that are on this Zoom are here working together. We're all nonprofits. We only help people for free. We just genuinely don't have any interest in this other than getting out legitimate information to students in any way that we can, especially because these big decisions can have financial consequences, and we want to empower people with the resources to make the choices that are right for them. So please tell your friends, you can call our hotline. Please be patient with us if a lot of people call. You can see there aren't that many of us, but we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. And we really appreciate you joining. So I'll stay on for a sec, but I'll try and end the recording now. And thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah, thank you all. And we really appreciate not just the students, but the faculty, staff, and parents who have been sort of supporting the students and getting the word out about this. We will, when we have a link to the recording, I will make sure that I'll share it with all of the folks that I've been in contact with. So I know a couple of people have messaged me directly about that, so that it can be shared widely around. I do think also that Middle States, the accreditor, is going to be putting out more information about what's happening with their process too. And we're hoping that the Middle States website will include not only the link to this recording, but also the information about NILAG's hotline, as well as other resources that are available for WELL students. This is a process, again, that I think over the next few weeks and few months, you're probably going to have more questions. I think Jessica's advice to not rush into anything here is probably the best advice that you can get right now. Get your transcripts, get your records, and then take some time to figure out what your next steps are. And we're really grateful and lucky to have NILAG and Law New York helping through the process. And I am here at NCLC, the National Consumer Law Center, to also give some more information. We have a general borrower website that we actually put out updates on all sorts of things related to student loans and other school accountability issues. If you ever have just general questions about any of that, whether you're a current student or a recent grad or faculty, please feel free to go and visit that website. It's studentloanborrowerassistance.org. I'll put it again in the chat for folks to see. But really, thank you all again for being here. We know that this is truly a tough time, and I hope that I will be with you all at some point before the school closes, singing around the sycamore just to say goodbye one last time. But the WELLS network does not end when WELLS closes, so please feel free to keep reaching out as you have questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And I just wanted to answer one last question on video that was put in the chat. That was a good question. How do you know if something's an approved teach out? You look at the Middle States web page for WELLS and it will say what the approved teach outs are. I put an example in the chat. There's a school, one of the closures we worked on is called ASA College. If you look at the ASA College page, you can see it like very clearly says like ASA has approved teach outs with colon, and then it lists the schools. And if you look at the WELLS page, it doesn't have language like that. It says basically like the school needs to tell us their teach out plan. And so I encourage you to, I think Middle States is a really good source of definitive information, and I would check their WELLS page because they're the accreditors.
And I just wanted to jump in and say that, yes, definitely rely on the Middle States page for the most accurate and up-to-date information. Currently, the New York State Department of Education's page has what WELLS has said is the teach out programs listed, but those have not been approved yet. So that is also not accurate. So if you want to make sure it is an approved teach out plan, check with the Middle States website, because that is going to have the most accurate information, because they are the ones that approve the plan. And they approve the plan by going through a process that's set out by federal regulators. So this is a process that is not just there, as Jessica has said, just to make sure everything is good. There's actually a lot of requirements that have to be met to make sure that the programs are actually going to be good and benefit students. So that's why it's really important to make sure it's an approved program. And for all the other reasons as well, if you sign up for an approved teach out program, that could impact your loans too. So you want to make sure you have that information before you make any big decisions.
All right, I'm going to end the recording, but we'll hang out for a few minutes if anyone has individual questions. And Laura we put our website in the chat, we put our hotline in the chat. Feel free to reach out also individually. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.